I, 31M, live in a mid-rise apartment in a city where space is a luxury and empathy is non-existent. I'm an independent software architect, which basically means I spend my days in hoodies making sure global logistics systems don't crash. I'm quiet, I pay my rent early, and I have one companion, a 10-year-old golden retriever who is basically a sentient marshmallow. My dog is my shadow. He was the only thing that got me through my father's passing and a brutal breakup. He doesn't bark, he doesn't chew, he just exists. But to my neighbors, 40s M and F, he was an eyesore. They moved in 6 months ago and immediately decided the building was their personal kingdom. They are the kind of people who complain about the industrial smell of the hallway and send emails to the HOA about the specific shade of doormats. Within a week, they targeted my dog. The ordinary interaction that turned into a war happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was waiting for the elevator with my dog. He was sitting calmly at my heel. The neighbor stepped out, and the wife immediately pulled her designer coat tight, let out a dramatic gasp, and jumped back as if he were a grizzly bear. "Can you take the stairs?" the husband snapped. My wife has a very sensitive nose, and that animal smells like wet wool. It's disgusting. This is a luxury building, not a kennel. "He's a resident here just like you," I said, keeping my voice level. "And the elevator is for everyone." "Not for long," the husband sneered. "We didn't pay $500,000 for this condo to share an enclosed space with a shedding beast. We've already started a petition. You and that mutt are out." I thought it was just hot air. It wasn't. 2 days later, I received a formal notice from the building management. My dog had been flagged as a nuisance and a safety hazard. The petition had 12 signatures, all coordinated by the neighbors. They had lied, claiming he had growled at children and fouled the common areas. It was a calculated, entitled hit job designed to trigger the building's strict 3-strike eviction policy for pets. But here's the thing about being a quiet guy in a hoodie. People assume you're struggling. They don't realize that my father didn't just leave me a set of old tools. He left me a commercial real estate trust that I've been quietly growing for a decade. I live in this apartment because I like the view, not because it's all I can afford. The tension escalated when I found a complaint taped to my door. It wasn't from management. It was a printed list from the neighbors, detailing fines they believed I owed them for the emotional distress of living near a dog. They were demanding I pay them $500 a week, or they'd go to the city council to have him declared a dangerous animal. I didn't reply to the note. Instead, I called my trust attorney. "The building on 4th and Main," I said. "The one I'm currently living in." "Who owns the parent company?" "Already out of Chicago," my attorney said. "They've been looking to liquidate their residential holdings in this zip code for months." "Why?" "Buy it," I said. "The whole complex. The land, the leaseholds, the management company. All of it. And do it by Friday." I spent the next 48 hours watching the neighbors from my balcony. They were high-fiving in the courtyard, clearly thinking they'd won. They had no idea that while they were trying to get my dog evicted from his home, I was busy becoming their boss. Stay tuned for part 2. I'm about to show you the lease renewal meeting where the neighbors realize that their landlord isn't a faceless corporation anymore. It's the guy with the smelly dog. Subscribe if you want to see an entitled couple realize they just petitioned their way into homelessness. By Friday afternoon, the ink on the acquisition was dry. I wasn't just a tenant anymore. I was the sole proprietor of the holding company that owned every brick, pipe, and lease agreement in the building. I told my attorney to keep the management staff in place for the weekend, but to transfer all dispute resolution files directly to my personal server. The neighbors didn't wait for the dust to settle. They thought they had me on the ropes. Saturday morning, there was a pounding on my door. I opened it to find the husband standing there, holding a digital camera and looking triumphant. "I caught him," he said, shoving the screen in my face. It was a blurry photo of my dog sitting on the lobby rug. "That's a violation of the no animals on carpet rule. That's your 3rd strike. I've already emailed the management office. You should start looking for a motel that takes strays, because you're being served with an eviction notice on Monday." "You've been busy," I said, leaning against the doorframe. 12 signatures on that petition, right? You really worked the floors to get people to turn against a dog that doesn't even bark. People want a certain standard," he sneered. We're the ones who make this building prestige. You're just a guy who brings down the property value. My wife can finally breathe again knowing you're leaving. Honestly, we're doing the building a favor." I looked past him at his wife, who was standing in their doorway down the hall, smirking and holding a glass of expensive-looking sparkling water. She actually gave me a little wave of dismissal. This was their second act of entitlement, the social purge. They weren't just trying to move me. They were trying to curate the building to fit their ego. They had used the HOA rules as a weapon, twisting safety and nuisance clauses to target anyone they deemed unworthy of their presence. "I think you should check your email," I said calmly. "A notice went out to all residents 10 minutes ago regarding the change in ownership." "Oh, we saw that," he laughed. "Some company called Canis Holdings bought the place." "Good. They'll probably be even stricter than the last guys. I've already drafted an introductory letter to the new owners explaining why you need to be fast-tracked out of here." "I am the new owner," I said. He froze. The smirk on his face didn't disappear. It just hung there looking confused. "What? No, don't be ridiculous. You're a freelancer. You wear hoodies. You can't buy a building in this district." I pulled out my phone and showed him the official change of ownership declaration from the Secretary of State, along with the internal management portal that listed me as the primary administrator. "The name Canis is Latin for dog, by the way," I added. "I thought it was fitting. And about that third strike you mentioned? I've reviewed the footage from the lobby. You were the one who lured my dog onto the rug with a treat just to take that photo. That's fraudulent misrepresentation and harassment." His wife dropped her glass. It shattered on the hardwood, but neither of them moved. The husband's face turned a ghostly mottled white. "You can't do this," he stammered. "We have a lease. You can't just buy a building to win a neighbor dispute." "I didn't buy it to win a dispute," I said, stepping back into my apartment. "I bought it to improve the standard of the residents. And per the terms of your lease, the one you insisted be enforced to the letter, I've decided to exercise the safety and harmony clause." Stay tuned for part 3. I'm about to show you the new house rules I drafted that made their luxury life a living nightmare. Subscribe if you want to see what happens when the no humans allowed policy starts with the 2 biggest pests in the building. The following Monday morning, I didn't send a sheriff, but I did send a courier. I had spent the entire weekend with my legal team meticulously dissecting the luxury standard lease agreement the neighbors had helped draft with the previous board. They had made it incredibly easy to terminate a tenancy for behavioral inconsistencies that threaten the quiet enjoyment of the premises. I called a mandatory building-wide meeting in the lobby. Everyone showed up, including the neighbors. The husband was trying to maintain his alpha stance, whispered arguing with a lawyer on his cell phone, while the wife kept adjusting her sunglasses like she was hiding from paparazzi. "I've spent the last 48 hours reviewing our community guidelines," I announced, standing in front of the marble fountain. "And it's clear that human interference has become the primary source of stress in this building. Effective immediately, I am implementing a species equality mandate. Any resident caught harassing, luring, or falsifying evidence against a registered pet will be found in material breach of their lease." I looked directly at the husband. His lawyer must have told him he was in trouble, because the entitlement had curdled into a desperate, litigious anger. "This is a joke," he shouted. "You're using your position to settle a personal vendetta. We have rights. You can't just change the rules because we don't like your dog." "I'm not changing the rules," I said, holding up a copy of their own petition. "I'm enforcing yours. You claimed wet dog was a sanitary hazard. Well, I've had the air quality sensors checked. The only hazard in the hallway was the concentrated levels of the industrial-strength ammonia you sprayed outside my door to irritate my dog's nose. That's environmental harassment and a violation of the building's fire and safety codes." The wife stepped forward, her voice trembling. "We'll sue you. We'll take this to the housing tribunal. You're trying to force us out because we're human?" "No," I said. "I'm forcing you out because you're a nuisance. But I'm a fair landlord. I won't evict you today. Instead, I've updated the common area policies. From now on, the elevator is pet priority. If an animal is inside, humans must wait for the next car or take the stairs. The lobby rug is now a designated play zone. And since you complained about shedding, All residents in your wing are now required to contribute to a sanitation surcharge to cover daily professional deep cleaning of the carpets, starting with your unit. This was the third act of entitlement, the legal bluff. They tried to stay. They sent me 3 cease and desist letters in 24 hours, claiming I was creating a hostile living environment. They even tried to call the police, claiming I was threatening them by walking my dog past their door. The police arrived, saw my dog sitting wagging his tail, looked at the neighbor screaming about animal sense, and told them it was a civil matter. I didn't budge. I started the formal eviction process based on the fraudulent misrepresentation of their original petition. I had the security footage of the husband luring my dog with treats and the wife spraying the ammonia. In the state of New York, providing false testimony to trigger an eviction is a serious breach of contract. You have 7 days to cure the breach, I told them through my lawyer. Or you can vacate voluntarily. If we go to court, I'll make sure the record of your treat fraud follows you to every rental application you ever submit for the rest of your lives. The 7th day arrived like a funeral for their ego. My neighbors realized that no lawyer in the city was going to win a case against high-definition security footage of them framing a dog. They sent a final desperate email through their counsel offering to settle if I paid them to leave. I didn't even respond. I just sent a crew to wait by the curb with the dumpster. The neighbors tried one last dirty trick before they left: the property sabotage. They knew they were losing their luxury life, so they decided if they couldn't have it, I'd have to pay to fix it. While they were packing, they accidentally left all the high-end faucets running and plugged the drains, hoping to cause a massive flood that would soak through the floorboards into the units below. I was sitting in my unit, watching the smart building dashboard on my tablet. I saw the water usage for their unit spike to an impossible level. Since I owned the building, I didn't need a warrant to enter during an active emergency. I walked down the hall with my maintenance lead and used the master key. We walked in to find the husband standing in the kitchen, watching the sink overflow with a smirk on his face. He didn't even have his bags packed yet. He was just enjoying the revenge. "The pipes must have burst," he said, not even trying to sound convincing. "Shame. This is going to cost you a fortune in water damage." "Actually, Mike," I said, nodding to my lead to shut off the unit's main valve from the hallway. Every unit in this building was retrofitted with moisture sensors and automatic shutoffs last year, something you would have known if you'd ever read the Strata newsletters. But more importantly, you just committed criminal mischief and attempted insurance fraud on camera. I pointed to the hidden leak detection camera I'd installed in the utility closet when I took over. It had a perfect angle of him intentionally plugging the sink. This was the climax. The husband's alpha mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He realized that every move he made was being countered by someone who actually understood the prestige system better than he did. "I want you out by midnight," I said. "And because of the maintenance lien clause in your purchase agreement, I am freezing the equity on this unit. You won't be able to sell it or transfer the title until the full cost of the emergency response and the environmental cleanup for that ammonia you sprayed is paid in full. We're talking about 6 figures by the time my lawyers are done with the hazard fees." The wife came running out of the bedroom, clutching a designer bag. "You're stealing our home. This is a dictatorship." "No," I said, walking to the door. "This is a building that finally has some standards. And unfortunately for you, human entitlement didn't make the cut." The satisfaction of watching them haul their own boxes down the stairs, because the elevator was reserved for my dog's scheduled grooming appointment, was better than any check I could have written. They looked like refugees from a war they started themselves. Stay tuned for part 5. I'm about to show you the grand reopening, where I turned their former unit into a luxury dog daycare for the rest of the residents and the final pathetic letter I received from the husband's new landlord. Subscribe if you want to see the no humans allowed policy reach its final form. It's been 6 months since I watched my neighbors trudge down the stairs with their overpriced luggage, and the building has never smelled better. The luxury standard they were so obsessed with finally exists, but it's not based on designer coats or keeping the right people in the lobby. It's based on peace. The satisfying revenge wasn't just in the eviction, it was in the conversion. I didn't put their unit back on the market. I knew that having another human family in there would just risk another cycle of drama. Instead, I gutted the $1.2 million condo and turned it into the Canis Resident Lounge. It's now a state-of-the-art, indoor dog park and spa for the building's tenants. We replaced the prestige hardwood with waterproof, pet-friendly turf and installed a high-end filtration system that, ironically, ensures the air is cleaner than the wife's sensitive nose could ever dream of. The husband tried to fight the maintenance lien in court, but he was drowning. Between the evidence of his attempted flooding and the clean hands doctrine, which basically states you can't ask the court for help when you've been a total snake, the judge gave him zero leeway. To settle the debt and the legal fees, he was forced to sell the unit back to my holding company at a 30% discount. I used his own equity to pay for the new dog showers. The final, most pathetic footnote came last week. I received a letter from a property manager at a B-grade apartment complex across town. Apparently, the husband was trying to rent a unit there and had listed me as his previous landlord. The manager wanted to know if they were troublesome tenants. I sent over the security footage of the sink sabotage and the ammonia spray. I attached a note that simply said, "Excellent at paying on time, but has a documented history of criminal property damage and harassment of residents. Proceed with extreme caution." He was rejected within the hour. He's currently living in a corporate rental where pets are mandatory in the unit next door. I like to think he spends his nights listening to barking and thinking of me. My dog? He's the unofficial king of the building. He spends his afternoons in the lounge, getting treats from the same neighbors who once signed that petition. Most of them apologized once they realized the nuisance wasn't the dog. It was the people who tried to use him as a pawn. I realized that the no humans allowed policy shouldn't just be about species. It's about the human traits of greed, entitlement, and cruelty. If you can't act better than a golden retriever, you don't belong in my building. The marshmallows have officially won. If you enjoyed watching a couple of luxury bullies get evicted by the dog they tried to destroy, hit that subscribe button. I've got a property manager at my new office who thinks reserved parking is just a suggestion for his daughter's Vespa.